Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So today we have a range of Star Wars news updates, some very exciting ones, and we begin with The Mandalorian Season 3. The other day we got the Disney Gallery, which I did react to. I reacted to certain segments of it, some bits I found really interesting, but there is one piece of concept art I think deserves its own segment. This comes from The Mines of Mandalore, Chapter 18, when Din Djarin bathes in the living waters and Bo-Katan goes to rescue him. She looks up and sees the Mythosaur. It really was a magnificent episode. The Mythosaur is such an incredible, legendary beast, one I wish we got more of. I really enjoyed that rumor that Bo-Katan was going to ride it. That didn't make it into the show, but I think Grogu's going to be the one to connect with it, as we saw in the final episode. But in this piece of concept art, if you look closely you can see that Din Djarin does not have his helmet. We were robbed of this version of this scene. Now it goes back to what we said a few months ago. After season 2 in the Book of Boba Fett, Jon Favreau wanted more scenes of Din Djarin without his helmet. But because of the logistics of Pedro Pascal filming on The Last of Us, that was not possible. On top of this, I made a video a few weeks ago talking about the alternate version of the ending on Navarro, where Din Djarin and Din Grogu are sitting on their front porch, but instead of the helmeted version we got, where Brendan Wayne was the fill-in stunt double, it was going to be Pedro Pascal in that scene, where we see Din's face. So this version of the scene with the Mythosaur might have been the same thing, but not because Din voluntarily removed his helmet. That would have been counterproductive, because the reason he's there in the first place is to redeem himself. Instead, as he was pulled down, his helmet fell off. This could have been ironically symbolic for many reasons if they went with this, but they decided not to go with it, and I kind of see their point. The purpose of Din going into the living waters was to be redeemed, so they didn't want to complicate matters by having it fall off. But it would have been nice at some point in season 3 to see Din remove the helmet, maybe after the ceremony at the end. This was a new dawn for Mandalore, one where the old stricter rules of the tribe have been eased. But what do you think? Would you have liked to see this version of that scene? I've also seen some fans ask why Pedro Pascal was largely absent from the Mandalorian documentary. Well, he's even admitted himself he just did the voice. Alright, so now my dear friends, we're going to talk about some comments made by Kathleen Kennedy. But first, James Mangold has shared some new details about his Star Wars movie. Notably, he's not even going to be using the term Jedi, mainly because his film takes place in a time period before the Jedi Order. This is really to do with the first Force users. Bear this in mind for the next segment of this video. Just hold on to that little nugget of information. He also says one day he'd love to speak with George Lucas, just kind of pick his brain a bit, and he also mentions his cancelled Boba Fett movie had rated R elements to it, not that Disney would ever have approved. It was going to be violent, intense, dark, but he says the failure of Solo, a Star Wars story, made Lucasfilm question if those kind of movies were right. Instead, Boba turned into the Book of Boba Fett in 2021. So some interesting tidbits there, and that was in an interview speaking with Happy Sad Confused. So now we're going to talk about the future of Star Wars films. So this has been making the rounds, and I kind of want to give my input. Kathleen Kennedy's been talking about the upcoming slate of Star Wars films, 2 in 2026, and then 1 in 2027. I've already expressed the reasons. I don't think that's going to be the case. I predict they're going to do 1 each year. I can't see them doing 2. But now, speaking with GamesRadar.com, Kathleen Kennedy explains why the Rey movie and James Mangold films are linked. This is rather unexpected, and just as a side note, there's been a little bit of speculation, a bit of jibber-jabber regarding James Mangold's Star Wars film. If Indiana Jones flops, and given the immense budget it had, it might, is he still going to be allowed to do a Star Wars movie? Some food for thought. So let's see what Games Radar say. Some of the most exciting news stories to arrive from Star Wars Celebration 2023 were the reveals that Daisy Ridley's Rey will be returning in a new movie set after The Rise of Skywalker, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny director James Mangold will be helming his own Star Wars movie about the origins of the Force. So nothing to do with the Jedi Order just yet, the first Force users, how they discovered ways to use the Force, the Ashtar and the Boga, the light and the dark, and all of that kind of thing. And it's interesting they say exciting news, because while there are fans, myself included, who are excited about the possibility of more Rey stories, maybe this time with a bit more planning, I've not seen much general hype in the fandom for this film, not compared to Dave Filoni's film or shows like Andor, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka of course, which is coming up in just 2 months' time. But maybe once we have a trailer, maybe once when everything is set in stone, there will be much more anticipation. They go on to say, Rey's movie is set to focus on rebuilding the Jedi Order, but of course, she won't be the first to try and restore the Jedi to their former glory. They say, as we've seen across Disney Plus TV shows and The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker did his best to build his own Jedi Academy, though ultimately his efforts were destroyed by Kylo Ren. Considering that history, how will Rey's Star Wars film break new ground? And so here is the quote from Kathleen Kennedy herself, she says, "I think what's great about Star Wars is that it's a big galaxy, and we're coming off what was a major war with the First Order." She's talking about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the Battle of Exegol, and she then goes on to say, "And now Rey's made a promise to Luke. That's really the core of where we're going and what this story will be, and I think it offers just tremendous opportunity to introduce new characters and start with something fresh, because we culminated with what George Lucas was creating, and now we take all of that and move it to the next chapter." So they're done with George's story, and this is something we've predicted, we've known, we've suspected ever since 2019. The Rise of Skywalker was the end of the Skywalker saga, and so now they're moving into new and fresh territory. They're done with George's story as we know it. Not that they did much with it in the sequel trilogy, they didn't do much with his plans, his original treatment for 7, 8 and 9. There were some aspects thrown in there, but not too much. And so, as for Mangold's movie, they say that film will take us back a long way on the Star Wars timeline to the Force's very beginnings. And Kennedy tells Games Radar, "This has been a major consideration for some time." She says, quote, "That's come up a lot from the moment I stepped in and George brought me into the company. There's been a lot of interest in that." So while Rey's movie is all about the future and Mangold's one is about the distant past, according to Kennedy, the two share a surprising connective tissue. She says, "It was something that James Mangold, immediately sparked to, and I think it's a really nice compliment to what we're doing and moving into the future with Rey, and then understand a bit more where this all came from, because it will be at the heart of creating a new Jedi Order, so to get a real sense of where that might have begun with the dawn of the Jedi could be pretty cool." But here's the problem with this. She talks about the similarities between the two films being the Jedi Order restarting it, starting something fresh, but in the same breath, they say James Mangold's film is before any concept of the Jedi. This is about the first Force users, unless it's really about the origins of the Jedi religion, which is very different, because the dawn of the Force is not the same thing as the start of the Jedi Order. There are differences there. I understand the gist of what she's saying, let's just wait and see. I want to say these films are going to be great, but we don't know that. There have been increasing issues at Lucasfilm when it comes to budgets, when it comes to planning, when it comes to even stories within the Star Wars universe. I don't think there is as much confidence in Star Wars content in 2023 compared to only a couple of years ago. That's just something I've noticed. And of course, as Star Wars fans, we want things to succeed. And I've shared this opinion before, but I do think Star Wars needs a big screen release. Disney Plus is a really good medium for Star Wars TV shows, especially when they get them right, but we miss the big screen presence, and so when we do get our next film, probably the Rey one, the one starring Daisy Ridley by Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, they can't afford to mess around. So I'm really hoping when it came to pitching this film, putting people in the right positions, Kathleen Kennedy made the right choices. I don't want to prejudge. Filming on the Rey movie is set to begin in 2024 in April, so I can imagine next year there's going to be a lot more buzz. I just want them to do right by the character of Rey, to give her a meaningful character arc now that she's a Jedi Master. But hand on heart, I really don't know what to expect. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and if you want more videos that you can't find here on YouTube, while also getting access to our Discord server, and so much more, then click the link down there in the description. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you, always.